happened. It opened down.
Okay.
So they expected $45. It dropped down to around 42 and trading around 44-ish. But not such a bad day. I mean, considering the market was down much more before. But yeah.
And Lyft.
How do they not make money? I don't understand that whole Lyft Uber. Like, wouldn't you figure the margin would be massive?
It's funny when you go public, it's just a license to lose money, right? So they take in billions upon billions. I mean, let's look at, Carvana. I mean, everyone talks about that in nauseum, but no, do you look at the market cap of that? Do people look at the market cap of that company? They got firepower for years to come if it stays where it is, I'll tell you that much. And there's such a small float that you can't really short the stock, because if you did short the stock, there's only a few people who control the amount of shares that are outstanding. So you just can get your face ripped off. And the price of the stock can stay up pretty high, which allows them to fund all sorts of initiatives.
Who are you referring to?
Sorry?
Who are you referring to?
Carvana.
Gotcha.
So,
I was getting this live on Facebook, so I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, nice shot. It looks like you made it happen, Jeff.
I did make it happen.
Yeah.
One time. Didn't take 10. Getting better.
Well, we didn't say anything bad about Facebook. We're saying things bad about their competitors. So they're like, yeah, get that up there as fast as you can.
No, we were just talking bad about you.
I mean, if people only understood how Facebook charges, people wouldn't be all that happy. And then the Facebook pixel on everybody's sites, people wouldn't be that happy about. There's lots of things. I mean, I think Facebook has a decent overall product, but they have, they're going the WeChat way with WhatsApp, which is, massive upside for their stock still, but they have other things that are just a little bit interesting. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. What's your favorite?
I don't know. From a social perspective, I just use LinkedIn pretty much. On a phone, I use WhatsApp on occasion, so I can be assured that all my contacts and everything have been taken and sucked into Facebook for sure.
I was referring more to which shady practice do you like the most?
The number one shady practice is their pixel on everybody's site, and no one understands. I don't know. I had the whole argument back and forth with an unnamed person at an unnamed public company with regards to a product set that relies on Facebook, and I just don't get it. I don't understand what anyone doesn't see. Ultimately, you put a pixel on your site, it collects your audience. And do you think that your audience isn't being used by others? A. And B, it's being used by others. And C, it's being used by others. And then there's the other practice of, charging for clicks that came from a different source. So if you pay on a per-click basis on Facebook, well, you think that you're paying for a click that came from Facebook, but that's not necessarily true.
Oh, yeah?
No.
That was a big eye-opener for me.
Yeah.
Where else does it come from?
So the way it works is you have a Facebook pixel on your site, right? And if they serve, you an ad, and you don't act on that ad, but later on you go to Google My Business and you click on a link in Google My Business, or you click on a paid search ad and you go to that dealer site, guess who else charges you for that click?
What?
And takes credit for it.
Mm-hmm.
They charge you because they feel as though they're part of the attribution funnel. You set them attribution funnel. So, it's funny when you look at your GA, you see
that's a waste.
Massive amount. So think about it this way: you're paying twice for the click in theory. And let's go further. You go to GA, because so many people are relying on GA, which GA is only about to get much worse. But if you rely on GA and you look at your clicks and you say, well, I only got X amount of clicks from Facebook, but I'm paying for Y. And the disparity is that obviously GA hopefully registers the clicks that are coming to your site, coming from Facebook or one of their related subdomains. But if it comes from Google My Business, or if it comes from paid search, or if it comes from a different source, obviously that doesn't count towards the click count, but you're still being charged by Facebook for that. So.
That's, again, following today's theme, wasted advertising. Wasted budget.
If you think that's bad, there's like 20 different providers who all name their UTM sources as who they are, but really they're buying Facebook traffic. It's even I see it from email providers, we see it from direct mail providers, we see it from, there's products by large companies that they just offer their product and it says whatever company, but meanwhile it's coming from Facebook. It's just a rebrand.
Wow.
Yep.
Brian Tucker was asking if that's documented anywhere.
What's documented anywhere?
Has to be.
How Facebook is charging for attribution.
100%. I could dig up the link and send it to you, but they document it in their own. That's why they ask you to set the audience time frame. You can set it for 30 days, 90 days, 60 days, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But Jeff, I understood it was just a few days after so they expose the ad. You see the ad. If you convert through another method in maybe 2 or 3 days, it was some limiter in terms of when they would claim the influence.
You can set the attribution window. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can most certainly set the attribution window, but then there's, okay, so who's running your Facebook advertising? How long are they setting the attribution window for? And the attribution window's only relevant component of it is so that they can charge for the clicks that come from other sources during that attribution window.
Well, on that bomb, maybe we should introduce everyone and say, hey, Refresh Friday's here. Jeff, am I stealing that one from you?
I think that's his cough.
Oh, allergies.
Yeah, it is Friday. So we've been live for a while now, though. But we like to do that. We like to do that with Tognetti because he always leaves out some good information before we get started sometimes. So, but today we have Tognetti and we've got Nenni. I don't know how that goes together.
Law firm.
Yeah, but thanks, Jeff. As always, thanks for joining us. And Nenni, I didn't realize you hadn't been on the show. I swore that you had been on once before.
I may have. I've been a lurker for in the 2 years I've started the business. It's DealerRefresh is my go-to for when I get stumped, and I don't get as stumped as much as I used to. But just for Refresh Fridays, I try to catch it every week.
Well, we appreciate it for sure. So also great having you on board. Of course, you've written quite a few articles for DealerRefresh. We're probably due for another one here soon. Some more Nenni logic thrown down in front of us,
which is always super valuable.
Yep.
Sounds good. Well, thank you.
Yeah. So thanks. So today's theme is sort of what we were talking about before we really officially got started. Is wasted advertising and wasted budget, more or less. All the different ways that dealerships are wasting their budget. Some of the little tricks out there that some of the different social networks have that is just, I guess you could say, plowing through a dealer's budget unknowing. Paid search probably even gets down to SEO sometimes, and you've got some you waste a lot of money because your manufacturer is bidding on the same keywords that you are. They're going after the dealership name in different variations, and of course you as a dealership, you're purchasing those keywords as well. Why is this happening? Of course there's probably a couple different reasons that make no sense, and blowing through our budgets, so. And I'm sure, Jeff, you probably got a list of about 20 others, and same way with you, George. You probably got another list of 20 others that dealerships need to be aware of because they're just wasting money, man, wasting the budget. So.
And with that said, I think that with what's coming in today's show, if you know a dealer on Facebook, you're friends with one, share this video.
Yeah,
this is stuff that needs to get out there, and dealers need to be aware of it.
Or suppression lists. I can't wait to talk about that. I mean, that stuff makes me really laugh. But yeah.
When you touched, before we even got started, Jeff, you were talking about something that I was sort of aware of, but you laid it out a little bit more clear for me. I didn't realize that if you've got that Facebook pixel on your website, that somehow they're taking credit for clicks that they're not even producing.
Yeah, they take credit for if they served an ad to a person during an attribution window and that person didn't click on that ad and they come from a different source.
And a dealership or whoever's setting that campaign up can go in there and
set attribution windows. There's a number of things you can do. I mean, the levers and buttons that you have to push are vast. It's the same way with AdWords. AdWords comes out of the box set completely against you. It's set so that all the networks are turned on by default. And if you ever went in there, what does that mean? That means that you'll be running display ads on parked domains or error pages. That is a setting in AdWords.
Great.
Yeah.
Would there be a reason to have your ads show up on those pages?
No, and it gets even worse. If it does one step further. If you want to block, I'll pause that one and I'll give you an even better one. If you want to, let's say you're a car dealership in Austin, Texas, and you want to, all of a sudden, you're seeing traffic coming from all over the place. So you say, you know what? I want to block all traffic outside of the United States. I want to block all proxy traffic. I want to block a whole slew of different forms of traffic coming to my website, right? Mm-hmm. So you go ahead and you do that, and you try and run AdWords. Your AdWords account will shut down. And because they say, and I can forward this link to you as well, they say that your website has to be accessible from anywhere at all times. So they run spiders from all over the world, and you'll see that in your analytics. You see Google.in, whatever. You'll see like a million of them. And those are typically little scripts of code just checking your site. And if your site doesn't allow them does not allow those trackers to hit your pages, then ultimately what takes place is your AdWords account will shut down.
That's interesting.
So why would you, the funny thing is why? Why do I have to have my site accessible to people all over the world or to proxies if I'm advertising in, Austin, Texas?
Well, so you spend money.
Yeah. I still haven't figured it out yet. So.
Wasted. So you said pause something. What was the other thing that you were going to go back to?
The default settings across all these platforms are just geared to siphon off all your spends.
Yeah.
If you look, as I said, on AdWords, it starts off with search partners, and equivalent of the GDN. And that's another thing. Most dealers don't even understand what that means. They think that Google search is you type into Google search and you get a result. That's only one of the three networks. There's two other networks that all come standard, turned on. And one of those networks, the GDN, has had such problems with fraud. It's just monstrous. And the reason being is the GDN, there's something called AdSense.
Mm-hmm. By the way, you might need to explain what GDN stands for.
Oh, sorry. The Google Display Network, or it has Google AdX. The Google Ad Exchange is the big brother of the GDN. You can go on and on, or they have all different iterations of names for what it. Let's just call it the GDN, the Google Display Network. It's probably not current name, but we just refer to it as AdX. But on the display side, it has on the GDN in particular, and Facebook has this too. They have sites that I can partner with Google. So what does that mean? So I can build a website. Let's say I'm an avid skier or what have you. So I start writing a blog about skiing or what have you, and I go to Google. I say, Google, you know what? I want to monetize my site. And they give me a little snippet of code that I put on my site that's called AdSense. And then they start placing ads that are relevant in context most of the time on my site. And then we split the revenue in some sort of format that Google doesn't really disclose. And I earn a little bit of money from it. The problem is that the GDN is also the most bot-driven series of sites that there are. So what happens? Criminal enterprise will go out and sign up for AdSense, and they'll go out and they'll build a number of scripts. And those scripts will spider their sites, clicking on ads. You'll run your ads by default on those sites, and you'll be paying for traffic that's not real. The clicks will be cheap, and it will lower your overall cost per click. So a lot of ad agencies turn on all three, so it looks like they're performing by giving you a lower CPC. But the reality is those clicks have zero value, so you're really paying substantially more, even though you think you're paying less.
Wow. So, and they're just bots. Basically.
Oh yeah, and then you can't detect bots anymore. I don't care what anyone says. It's gotten to the point where, and we're, I don't know, I'm going to be a little arrogant. We're super savvy within that space, and I'll say to you that it's a losing battle. The only way you can defend against it is having a whitelist, vetting out the IDs that you want to target against. But on the GDN through AdWords, you have no hope because you got to look at I just encourage anyone, when you go into your AdWords account, look at the default settings. As I said, one of them is displaying ads on 404 pages. One of them is displaying ads on parked pages, like a parked domain. And this all comes standard when you turn on your AdWords account.
Wow.
I think a lot of this stuff ends up being over the dealer's head from a super technical perspective, but even just cutting it to its most basic pieces, and whether or not a dealer uses a consultant, me or whoever else is out there, just being a more informed purchaser of digital marketing, I think starts with just asking the hard questions. So I think if dealers are hearing a lot of this and saying, gosh, this seems so complicated, where do I get started? I think at the most basic level, it's what are some questions I can start asking my agency to hold them more accountable and to really take control of the agency review call. So I sit through tons of agency review calls every week, and typically the agency controls that. They show the metrics that they want to show. They're typically all about impressions and clicks and exposure and frequency. They don't really dive into, what did the traffic do downstream? Did it convert? Did it shop? Did it stay 10 seconds and throw up? Whatever it is. And so I think it's trying to dictate that call with the agency to say, on a paid search perspective, we want to look at the campaigns, the ad groups, and the keywords that are performing and not. Show me a list of my most expensive keywords that I bought last month and what's the landing page for those. I think just some of those basic discoveries, if you just ask the agency to peel back the onion layer a bit, focus more on traffic on your site versus clicks, and really from a keyword perspective. And they may say, well, that's really granular. We don't want to dive into that. Show me the top 10 keywords that gave a hard conversion. Show me the top keywords that, for the most expensive keywords, and you'll be shocked. In the last few months, so I've added a good number of dealers the last 3 months in a row, and 60% of them had cost per clicks that were, Sunday morning I'm working on a new dealer, and I text them and say, Monday morning we have to get your agency on a call and pause these campaigns. So $30, $50, one dealer, $83 a click for these runaway new make model. Oh, it's just insane. And best I can tell, and Jeff, Jeff Tognetti, you're definitely my superior on this deep dive technology stuff. Best I can find, they're running these new layers. So I was out at the IDS Innovative Dealer Summit. Google was talking about all the new audience layers. And so in my opinion, Google's trying to take a page from Facebook's playbook and say, look, now we're going to layer these remarketing audiences, auto intender audiences on your paid search. From what I found, when you layer those audiences on the keywords, they don't perform any better, and cost per click that should be like $3.50 or $35. And so my first indication to the agency is saying, one, let's turn off, let's run straight Google paid search. Let's turn off all this audience targeting. The cost per clicks come back down to normal levels. But the other challenging part is the agency who defends it. They're like, George, this is a really good click. And I try to tell them that digital marketing, ROI for digital marketing a lot of it should be a math exercise. So if it takes me 15 to 25 VDPs to equal a lead, my lead closing ratio is 10 to 15%, working backwards, if I pay $30 a click, how do I ever get to a reasonable pencil for a cost per lead or a cost per sale? So just ask the questions, ask to look at the keywords, ask to look at the campaigns, and in a lot of cases, those problems will just surface themselves. So.
George, again, my fault, because I thought that you had joined us several months ago. But for the listeners that aren't familiar with you, give us a little bit of background on who you are. We know who you are, of course, and we've known each other for a long time. And give us a little bit of background on your new venture. Of course, so, 2 years in at this point, not too new.
Just about 2 years, yeah. I'm working on the press release for my 2-year anniversary. Half kidding. So I started in the car business in '93. I'm the youngest of 7. My 2 older brothers, Mike and Jack, started a company called Dealer Specialties, which a lot of people are aware of. Started Dealer Specialties in '89. They were still working their day jobs. I joined in '93 as the first employee. From '94 to 2000, we just covered the country with Dealer Specialty franchisees. It was a great, a growth story. The mid '90s, we really reinvented the sticker business into a data collection, photo collection business, sending out 14.4 modems and little 240 by 320 digital cameras, and really tried to build a backbone of used vehicle inventory across the web. We were purchased by Trader Publishing in early 2000. The 2 brothers retired. I stayed on. Trader over the years became Dominion. I was lucky enough to continue to run Dealer Specialties, Dominion's digital marketing operations, until August of 2017, when I left to start Generations Digital. And it's been a ton of work. It's been very rewarding work, but back in dealerships on a regular basis and helping them to measure what works and what doesn't. So I don't sell services. I don't sell any agency services. I don't get spiffs or commissions or anything for recommending. However, I do recommend companies that I've graded and seen good results from what they do. But I help them figure out what works and what doesn't, and it's a great time.
So it's just mostly consulting experience is what you're offering through Generations Digital.
It is. It's almost 100% consulting. So now rolling out some Google Data Studio reporting for dealers who want the data, they want the reporting, they know they need Google Analytics, they don't know how to use it, and so I give them a canned set of monthly reports that they can use, and if they don't want the consulting, they can just get the reporting. So.
Fantastic. So what's your biggest pet peeve? What's at the top of your list right now where you feel as if dealerships are probably just blowing through most of their budget unnecessarily?
From a high level, like this business has just made me in many cases, I just really feel bad for dealers. I think dealers get taken advantage of by vendors who recognize that they may not understand the technology. So in many cases, it's really rewarding to go in there and change that tone. And my job's not to get the agency fired, but to make the agency better. It's a pet peeve for me when the agency is not open to, and not like I have all the answers, but just another voice, another set of eyes on numbers they may not be looking at.
Do you find most agencies do get offended?
Probably half, maybe more than half.
Okay.
Just how dare you, who's this guy asking these questions? And I'm just like, here's the data. If you have data to refute it, maybe my data is bad, but these campaigns look like they're laying an egg. These campaigns look great. Let's double down on these. Let's put 10 bets on the table knowing that 2 or 3 may not work. That's okay. Stop them as soon as you see them not working. Let's experiment with some other bets and that sort of thing. So most dealers overspend on paid search by a large margin. I think they underspend on paid social because they may not understand how to do it. And so that's usually the movement I'm trying to make. Let's do more with paid social. Let's do less and more appropriate with paid search.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say, and Jeffrey Tognetti is no stranger to Refresh Friday.
Can't say that I am.
So Jeffrey, why don't you take a second and tell us a little bit about DealerX?
Sure. We're started 2003, 2004 in that realm. Not as DealerX, as a company in the overall media space, from building like a marketing automation stack. Spun out the dealer side of the business in 2012. And I don't know, we handle a lot of interesting things. Primarily now our focus is what I consider business to business, not business to dealer. We focus on giving behavioral endpoints to a number of different companies. For example, like a full lead append, telling them that this customer was on the following sites, here's what they did across those sites, and giving them intelligence around their audiences. Targeting is our primary bread and butter. And we pretty much seen it all. I mean, not that big a company. There's only 25 of us. We probably did a little over 100 mil rev this year. And so it's little, but we carry a big stick.
Mm-hmm. Big stick to beat some of those other vendors up with, right?
No, I mean, listen, if someone does a good job, like, everyone's, that whole spin car thing, I think that Spin Car's core product is a good product. There's nothing wrong with it. Do I think that Spin Cars we're targeting is anything other than Criteo or anything else based on the past or anything of any substance? No, absolutely not.
But are they still playing the games? I know it's still a topic in the forums. I believe someone had just bumped that thread up yesterday or this morning or some point.
I mean, I just saw them collecting an audience that dealer wasn't aware of and that we weren't aware of, and I didn't.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's.
But I don't know what they're doing with it. So who am I to say? I'll make no statements. I think that it's going to sound crazy. There is far worse going on, like like this whole lead suppression thing, which I was saying before. You send me all the people in your database so that we can make sure that we don't target them. And like, for example, I had a store up in the Massachusetts area that is a pretty large store or group, and they were using this service that said, listen, we're going to email people, we're going to drive all this traffic to your site, just give us the list. And I said, don't give them any list. They said they're going to email a list, no problem. So they emailed the list, and they were paying on a per sale basis, and they provide the list to my client. So I said, and my client was so ecstatic. He's like, look, I did 25 deals from this. I said, 25 deals, huh? I said, okay, take that very same list and apply it to 3 months before this company started and tell me how many matches you got. Well, you got a ton of matches. And what they're basically doing is they're going out and they're, let's call it the white pages, and within a specific area, and that's their list. They'll go out and get an email append and an email address and so on and so forth, but they wouldn't provide the email address. They'll only provide the person's name and physical address. And so the dealer thinks that these people are contributing to everyone to them selling cars. But meanwhile, 3 months before they ever met that vendor, they had a whole bunch of sales that would have came from that vendor's list anyway. So it was just, there's tons of crazy stuff going on.
Wow.
Jeff, I think you were saying honeypotting solves that. You'd give me some really good advice at one point. I've shared that with dealers, but how do dealers combat that?
First, never give out your DMS. Let's just start there. And I say it all the time. I say that when Sports Authority went bankrupt, their email list sold for $15 million to Dick's Sporting, just their email list. So when you give out your DMS, that's all your advertising dollars. Think about this. How much money have you spent advertising over however many years, right? That is the sum result of that is your DMS or your CRM database, right? Mm-hmm. Why would you ever take that list and give it to someone just because they said they have to scrub against it or this or give someone access to it? It blows my mind. Anyway.
They need it.
For what? You could do a sales match at the end of the month, and you know what you should do? Give them a redacted version of what you're giving them. Give them or ask them to provide a list of who they targeted if they're email and direct mail marketers, right? Yeah. Give me a list. You can give me a redacted list or use a third-party hashing service to tell you what the matches were. You don't have to give them your DMS. And there was, in my presentation I did recently, one of them, I showed, and I won't even mention the vendor anymore because they're irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. Mariah Carey always says, I don't know her. I was like, have you ever seen those videos of Mariah Carey? They're asking her all about these A-list celebrities, and all she kept saying is, I don't know her. But anyway, this one vendor, they say that, oh, we emailed this person, but meanwhile we had access to the CRM, and we looked, and 3 days before the lead came in from CarGurus, and 4 days before that, and all they would do was pull on a daily basis and pull in, and they say, oh, we emailed them, but they wouldn't show you the email that they sent. They wouldn't show you date, timestamp. They wouldn't show you any of the stats. And this is a vendor that a lot of people use currently, and it's just laughable.
Really?
Oh yeah. I would share my screen and show you. But.
Name drop.
And in a prior Refresh Friday, you educated us on how scripts are being used against dealers. So wouldn't mind retouching on that a little bit as more advice for dealers to think about. So when you cancel a vendor and you don't remove whatever they installed on your website,
yes.
How can that be used against them?
It's your audience. So every person you drive to your audience is captured, sold, and or just retargeted again. So let me just be clear. When you go out and you buy an in-market segment from like an Oracle or a Blue Kai, what that in-market segment is, I'm not saying that they do this, but I'm saying that what that in-market segment is all the IDs that have touched, let's say, large properties that have automotive traffic, and they segment it out into, all right, this is Toyota Camry, all right, and so that's when you go out and you buy this segment to target against. Well, guess what? You're targeting against a specific audience. If you leave scripts such as a pixel within your site, your audience is being compromised and can be targeted against by any third party. Period.
So what are some plugins that get installed on dealer websites, just so people are, equating the word plugin and scripts with something that they probably know a little closer and deeper?
The number one no-no is a GTM. Don't let people put GTMs in your site. You already have a tag manager in your site. Why does anyone else need to put their own GTM in? And if you have a GTM in your site currently, you should limit say if someone sends you a script, you take that script, you ask them for a written explanation of what it is and what it does, and you have them sign off on something saying, listen, that none of this audience will be allowed to be targeted and resold, You give them a long list of what you can and can't do, and then you put that script in your GTM, which is really simple, or you have to manage your own GTM and remove. It's your responsibility to add and take out.
Mm-hmm. So
Great job.
Can I translate that real quick? So you've got a vendor that you're doing business with, and they come to you and say, we want to install a Google Tag Manager, our own, so we can monitor things that are going on your website.
100% right, yes. And when you allow that, it's a death blow. Why would you need someone else's GTM when in most instances you have your own GTM in there, or the manufacturer has a GTM? And what you should do is, if you have your own GTM, you have a list of what vendors you have and say, okay, this is a vendor, here's whatever script that they want. They've signed off on my agreements, and this is what they say that script does. If they don't utilize them anymore, you take that script out. And I mean, the truth is, the real problem is the dealers themselves. I mean, everyone thinks that they're going to get more sales. There's only a finite audience of new car buyers and used car buyers within a specific market. And this promise of more and more and more, what separates your marketing, your message from anybody else's message? I mean, a lot of times there's no, they use a car your car is being retargeted with the price and payment. So is 50 other dealers within your area. So I don't know. I think it's a combination of things.
And Jeff, an approach I've taken, and tell me what your opinion on this. I mean, once a dealer finds themselves in that situation, if they use Ghostery or some other tool to be able to discover, all the different tag managers, all the pixels are on their site, what I recommend to them is one by one, we wound these containers. I say wound it, just not to rip it out, but just change a couple, scramble some characters in it, with the help of your website provider, or maybe do all of them and then just see if the phone rings, or see, if you're breaking something significant, and then add them back as needed. That you may find yourself in a situation where you had 6 tag manager containers and you got yourself down to, tier 1 has one, tier 2 has one.
That's the problem with that. The problem with that is that tier 1, to your point, George, if you change anything within that script, the script doesn't work, right? So on the tier 1 side, and especially since they have, and this ties out obviously to tier 2 and tier 3 across the board, but on tier 1 side, they have all these tracking scripts prefab as part of their contracts with these, website gatekeepers, right? So you got Shift and Internet Brands. They contract with God knows how many website partners. Those website partners, all those sites come prefab with these scripts installed. And so you're definitely going to lose a large portion of your audience to start. And you really don't have a choice unless you want to take them out, which you can. But even tier 2 on the ad group side, they often put their own scripts in the GTM as well. We've seen that on a regular basis. Yeah. But then when you're allowing that coupled with tier 3 scripts, I don't know if anyone understands. I mean, there's a lot of, like, for example, you could take over a person's page, take over the content of the page with the GTM. Essentially, I guess Dealer Teamwork's product is on the page search side, is just using the GTM to change content on the page and have it have it tie out to their ads from a paid search initiative. I mean, to me, it's very simple stuff, but God bless them, inventing something simple that people like. It's, I guess, a good thing. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that putting that off to the side, you can change anything you want on someone's site with use of the GTM. You can insert whatever you want, capture whatever you want. The worst part is, and this is the worst part, that you can capture every lead form on somebody's site with that. And so think about this. I put my GTM in your site. I put a script in your site. I capture your lead forms. I capture them in real time. I can take that lead form, like I've seen other providers do, and say, and they don't know that you're capturing the lead form. You could pass that list to the dealer at the end of the month saying, these are all the people I drove to your site. And the dealer thinks that you're God, that you help them sell those because they have no idea that you're capturing the lead forms in their site. We've seen that.
Shady. George, you mentioned, I asked this on a Refresh Friday a while ago. I don't think anyone had the answer. What you mentioned the software program that will allow dealerships or whoever to find which scripts and codes are residing on your website that aren't necessarily being used.
Yeah, I don't know that you'd know if they're being used or not. I mean, you know that it's active on there. I think Google Tag Assistant you may be able to use that to see if they're active and see if they're firing. And I guess if you in GA you'd be able to see if the events are firing. But Ghostery will show you if they're showing up. Built with is another Ghostery. So it's like
Ghostery won't show you what's in a GTM. Ghostery will only show you if it's in the footer, the header, or what have you. They don't show you what's in a tag manager.
I don't think Jeff. Unless you have the logins for Tag Manager, you don't know what's in there.
Exactly right. That's why you can't give someone the access to put their own Tag Manager in your site, because then you're really effed.
Okay, Ghostry. But what? Well, then what will Ghostly or Ghostry, whatever the hell it's called, what will it do?
It'll show you, what's firing. It'll show you the Facebook pixels firing, this Tag Manager containers firing. So it's a Chrome
extension. An idea of what's out there and what's firing.
Right.
Okay.
You got to have Chrome. Chrome is your browser, and you add it as an extension.
Yeah, because what happened to me just not too long ago, our website wasn't loading all the way. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I looked down in the lower right-hand corner. I was like, why is this firing? I haven't used this service. It's been off the website for over, a year and a half. And all of a sudden, I guess maybe they're having some server issues or whatever, and it was trying to ping their server. And meanwhile, my website's not loading, and I don't even use this service anymore. So, I get with the website provider, and I go, look, I need a list of all the codes that that are installed on our website. I need that list so I can go through and have whatever I'm not using removed. I would also assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it could be causing our website not to load as quick as it should be. Correct?
Well, yeah. I mean,
I guess especially if it's pinging the service and the service is down.
It's a chronic problem. A lot of times scripts are inhibitors of site load.
Yeah, code.
And not just that, you think that's bad. So look at it on the mobile side. A lot of times people aren't, maybe your site will load, but maybe a button will be covered and won't be able to click on a specific button on the mobile side. There's lots of things that take place when scripts are placed on your site. I mean, I'm worried. We have websites as an offering, but we give it away as a value add for the most part to our clients. In some instances, we charge for it, and we don't really want to be in the website business. But the big problem is just that you always have to sit there and triple check what scripts are loading and causing a conflict where. And there's oftentimes, just like what you found, that's just a side effect. And forget about the fact that they're capturing your audience, your lead forms, and everything else. The side effects also that your site may not load properly.
Absolutely. So yes,
another technique. Oh, sorry.
Dealerships listening, I mean, please take George's advice and I guess check and Matt Kellogg, thank you. He went ahead and posted the link to Ghostry over on the Facebook stream. So yeah, I mean, use that service. If you've been signed up with different products and services that you're no longer using, be sure that their code has been removed 100% from your dealership website.
Jeff, here's another technique you can do. What I recommend to dealers to do is just start with your website provider. So get with a support rep. Typically, they're using online ticketing systems. Just have them go through the ticketing system and tell, in the last 2 years, tell me the pixels, the Tag Manager containers that have been added, because they're going to add it. They're going to document what they're doing. So you can, in many cases, find that out, get a list of all the different container numbers, and then just, one by one, go through, try to identify who they are. If they say, yeah, this was, lot links, we added it a year ago, you don't do business with them anymore, you're like, bingo, great, I'm removing that one. And so they can help you map, in some cases, who installed it, when it got installed.
Mm-hmm. Good advice. Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about the tier 3, tier 2, tier 1 advertising. I don't know what to call it, shenanigans, or what are dealers getting forced into that is a little contrary to their needs because the manufacturers have their own needs?
Everything?
Well, yeah, I left that one pretty open. But how does the paid search version of this work?
I mean, George brought up some good points before about him, I guess, working with the agencies and, sometimes resistant, sometimes not. I mean, the bigger thing on paid search on those type things is, using bid modifiers to increase on mobile and so on and so forth. But the problem across tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1 is that not only is the manufacturer, the regional ad groups, and all the dealers bidding on it, but so are the portals, and so are third-party suppliers to people, like whether it be insurance, whether it be warranties. So the well is super deep in terms of people. And because one person runs their campaigns bad, that can cost everybody a lot more money. And so think about it. I'm saying just one. I bet you there are many people who run their campaigns rather poorly. So it's a cost multiplier on your paid search campaigns as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just for starters.
Right.
And then
I recently saw, oh, go ahead.
No, I'll stop.
Oh, so FDA recently came out with, their recommendations, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. It was interesting. I heard from a couple of dealers. I think the dealers initially don't like being told, hey, here's your rice bowl of words that you'll use. Tier 2 will use these, and tier 1 will use these. And the dealer's like, that's no fair. They're taking all the good keywords, George. Look at the ones they're giving me. And when I looked at how they mapped it out, my advice to the dealer was, I think for the most part they're right. I mean, the keywords that they're and they're not really enforcing it. They're just sort of recommending it strongly. The tier 3 keywords are down funnel keywords that typically I've found perform the best for the store, and the tier 1 keywords, let them buy those. They're short tail, open ended, make keywords that just grab all these exhaust clicks. And I mean, you just see just silly stuff, and the agency may say, well, it's okay, George, we've got a great negative keyword list. It's fairly easy to run a report in analytics to say, show me all the search queries that the dealer has not seen from prior months. Sort of what's the stat out there where Google says X percentage of search queries, every year or every day they've never seen before. It's the same thing with dealerships. If you go in and look at your search queries in Google Analytics and compare that to previous 9 months, you'll see there's a ton of new ones. So a negative keyword approach is just like cat and mouse. I think it's a really ill-fated approach.
Unfortunately, I respectfully disagree with you there. I'll tell you why. I think that the problem is broad-based keywords are now kind of back in vogue, and you'll see that across many providers that the broad-based keywords they buy on purpose because they convert. So like Toyota or Toyota dealer. So they go out and buy those or the dealership's name, because it gets a phone call or it gets a conversion for someone looking for a Toyota dealer that's somewhat close to them. The longer tail keywords, which we happen to like a great deal, like Toyota Camry lease. Well, a Toyota Camry lease, there's just people comparing pricing, and the conversions on what we consider to see the bottom funnel are a lot lighter than the broader ones that are on the upper. People looking for a phone number or service on a particular dealership, and they're just typing in Toyota because they happen to think that every Toyota dealership is not owned by, they think it's all owned by Toyota, not individual franchisees. So I would say to you that negative keywords, George, I'd love to show it to you. Negative keywords are beautiful, but the problem is that people even apply negative keywords wrong. If you have Jeep and Wrangler as a phrase match or plus match, let's say Jeep and Wrangler is a plus match, well then if you do use Jeep, the Jeep is bidding against the Jeep. So you have to be able to use exact matches as a negative against phrase match and against broad plus. And a lot of people don't do that. So a lot of times they'll just drive up the cost per click substantially. And a lot of the low-lying fruit is in the simpler terms, especially on mobile, because a lot of people don't type out extensive search queries on mobile in particular.
Why is that? Just because
they're lazy. People are lazy. I mean, I don't know. I try and get to something with the least amount of effort. Human nature.
Agreed.
Yeah. So we've got a comment here from Carlito saying the FCA is pushing for tier 3 not to participate in tier 1 searches. So I think that goes with what you were saying there, George, that you agreed with some of the approach the manufacturers were taking in that.
Yeah. But what is that? My advice for dealers is just to run a relatively lean paid search budget. It's just, I think, and again, back to the Facebook, results, just from my perspective, I think Facebook ads are priced where Google paid search was 10 years ago or so. And it's become a very expensive tool that the engine will consume all the money you put into it. And so I think Google paid search has a number of different challenges with it. One, you've got a lot of ego buys that happen, right? So the agency sits with the dealer and says, hey, Jeff, you're a Mercedes dealer. You want to rank high for Mercedes? You're like, of course. Do you want to rank high for all the models? Why wouldn't I? How would you like to buy all your competitors' names? Definitely. Wow, slam dunk. I love, And so they build these keyword lists that are really foolish. They're not based on what people are searching for, what keywords will convert. And they've got these massive, I mean, some of these agencies will stick out their chest and say, we buy 100,000 or 1 million keywords per dealers. And I'm like, I can't imagine that there's 100,000 good keywords for any individual dealer. And they think paid search is a Swiss Army knife, and it's not. I mean, I think if you look at, and a lot of people pick on third-party classifieds. If you try to, again, my opinion, trying to use paid search for marketing used vehicles is just a waste of money. It's just, you can get there. You can, not that you can't find buyers, but you'll pay dearly in that process. When you look at the same cost per VDP, cost per, lead, chat, text, email, whatever it is, on third-party classifieds at a fraction of the cost, decent, closing ratios, they're built for that, right? These are big used car databases that are more efficient in trying to market used vehicles. Unless you have just massive amount of inventory of a certain make model, and you can build maybe a great CPO landing page with your certified vehicles. I mean, there's exceptions to it, but that's an area where I see just a lot of waste. And Jeff, I can disagree.
Two things on that, though. I mean, so for example, let's say on FCA, they don't want you to buy the keyword Jeep, but when you buy the keyword Jeep and Wrangler as a plus match, you're essentially buying Jeep. So as one of the keywords in it. So you're driving up the cost there for starters. So no matter what, you're always going to buy some sort of, or most people buy some sort of iteration unless they use Jeep as a phrase match. Jeep as an exact match as a negative against the broad. So, I mean, and even then you have to run a negative keyword script to see if that keyword set is hurting you. But most people don't do any of this because it requires work and the agency doesn't want to work. So that's A. B, right. On portals being more efficient, I agree that portals could potentially, since they have larger swaths on the used car side, do a good job in driving traffic, but there's a trade-off there. Instead of getting the person to your site, you're now paying for them to go to someone else's site, and your ratio of what your potential conversions are, it changes dramatically. Now, I will say that on used cars, I kind of agree with you, George. I think that used cars are very hard, unless it's repetitive in brand, that you're always getting a Toyota Camry or Toyota Corolla or what have you, because your quality scores stay high on repetitive in brand keywords that you're running for used. But if you're running dynamic, the inventory comes and goes so fast that you can't get a pretty high quality score, which overall drives up your cost per click on dynamic. And to that end, a lot of times the people who are price shoppers, they don't know exactly what they want to buy, so they'll look at 25 different VDPs just to get a conversion because they think that a LX 570 Lexus costs the same as a BMW 5 Series costs the same, a used, and they'll go through all the different cars that they would potentially have interest in. They'll click on your ads, and as you said earlier, George, they'll have a price shopper will have a ton of VDPs long before they get to what they're going to submit a lead on, and your cost of acquisition of that customer becomes stratospheric. So, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
2 cents.
Speaking of portals, should we throw CarGurus in the mix?
Sure.
Just fun.
They're not really fans of mine right now, so it's okay.
Oh, what happened?
What happened?
You got to elaborate, Jeffrey.
I mean, we're having this talk with multiple people that complaining that we can see audiences across their sites, and the problem is that they don't understand the whole ecosystem and how ads are served and how ads work on their site. And so, yeah, we can see a ton of audiences that we pay for, and if they want it to stop, then they shouldn't sell it. So I've had multiple discussions with them and others, and who they don't even understand what they're doing. And essentially, you can see these audiences on scale. You can see everyone. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people across those sites. And yeah, they don't like that. What does that mean in plain English? Essentially, every time they sell an ad placement, they give you all the information on that ad placement. And so when I'm interested in an ad placement on a specific site, well, they have to give up a ton of information. So I get to see the ID, what page they're on, what they're looking at, the whole 9 yards. And we utilize that information, our own first-party IDs, and we utilize that information pretty extensively. So,
yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what information are you seeing?
Everything.
Wow.
You get to see the person's IP, the device that they're on, their operating system, what exactly they're reading. So what the URL string is. You get to see a ton of stuff. But it's all legitimate because you have no choice but to give that up when I want to serve an ad on a specific site, on a specific page. I'm looking for the future, since cookies are dying, right? Since you have Apple with this
what's replacing the cookie?
Mobile device for sure, and then IPv6. So MAID, which is your mobile ad ID, or IDFA, which is Apple. So device is replacing it, or a profile, a graph of device to cookies. But cookies die after 7 days if they're first party now. So on Apple, on Safari related traffic.
What about, I'm hearing, was it sort of a buzz term going around, Polygons?
Oh yeah, sure. So just a bunch of different providers. All Polygon is a drawing around a piece of property. And so geofencing is where that rationale comes from. And people were doing geofencing all wrong in the past. You would say, all right, I'm going to geofence this dealership, and everyone that walks in, I'm going to serve them an ad. Now, the problem with that is that you'd have to know, you'd have to get ad requests from the websites that they were on. And most of the time, if people are inside a dealership, they're probably on Facebook or Instagram or what have you. They're in-app, and your ads on those particular apps, your geofencing would be irrelevant unless you're buying through Facebook or what have you. So polygons are simply used to just draw around a dealership or a residential address or what have you. And now there's people who sell all the devices that cross those polygons.
Yep.
And we use that on scale. So we look for people who've been there 4 days or more. We exclude them. We have 3 or 4 different providers. And then we even went out and mapped the entire United States through tax maps and did residential polygons. So if a device crosses a polygon at the house, we look for what's called a probabilistic match to a residential IP. And then we get that IP and we say, okay, what are all the devices that are connecting to that IP? And what's all the browsing behavior if it's our own first party device that we saw at the beginning.
So that gets really accurate, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you can pull all the devices, not all. I mean, that's a misnomer. You can pull a fair amount of devices visiting different dealerships, visiting different locations, and you can then take those devices, divine some more information, and then build a profile and target against them. And you can say, I want to target it. These are all the people who crossed into this Jiffy Lube. And what you really can do, some of the things that we're doing now for some CRMs and such and for ourselves is we can take a CRM or database and we can tell you all the people that are in your CRM or database, not all, but a fair amount, that have crossed into one of your competitive dealerships polygons or have crossed into a Jiffy Lube or what have you. And then we can also alert you what their browsing behavior is online. So if this person's your first party person and we have an MAID, we're able to pull up additional cookies, so on and so forth. You can start pulling browsing behavior around those people and set up alerts that if there's a keyword within the URL strings that they're looking at, that you go ahead and spin up targeting for that particular person. That's exactly what we do.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, how long is that going to last? I mean, on a privacy standpoint, is that some gray area, or I don't know. I think it gets a little on the creepy side.
I think privacy's been thrown out the window, man.
Thank you, Facebook, for obliterating privacy. Not even Facebook. Google's got so much more.
You're gonna have to guard your polygons, man.
Well, it's not going anywhere because it's not just the telcos.
What about Amazon?
It's the app providers and the telcos. A lot of people sell this aggregated information. I mean, there will be rules. Here's the problem. If you institute privacy rules across the board, the only people who are really going to win from that are Google and Facebook. Right now, we're more concerned in the current government of creating monopolies than we are of privacy because no one even can agree to a privacy standard. So everyone talks about GDPR or California's new law and so on and so forth. The problem is California can have a law, but then what about the rest of the states and how they go? So there has to be some sort of federal action. But as a byproduct of a federal law, what will happen, you only make Google and Facebook substantially stronger, and no one wants that duopoly. I mean, granted, you got Amazon coming right up the pipe too, but they're a lot different than Google or Amazon. I mean, Google or Facebook.
We were... shout out to Cliff Banks, but we were having a discussion on Facebook just this morning, and it's still funny how many people don't realize that the conversations are being recorded. whenever they have, one of those Alexas, or, or even your phone if you don't have the microphone and stuff turned off. So, but let's get back to dealerships wasting money with their ad budgets. What else? So we've got paid search. We know that's just running rampant. Let me ask this: what
SEO, maybe?
What is the best way for a dealership to manage their paid search campaigns? I mean, with so much going on, so many variables, losing money. You've got manufacturers, tier 1, tier 2, everyone bidding on the same stuff. I mean, should they lean it out? Should they, how do they go about measuring it?
Yeah, I would start with putting in 5 categories. I would say, in my mind, there's 5 categories for paid search. You're dealer branded, so your name, right? So, Nenni Toyota.
So buy your dealership name. Don't buy your dealership name. Only buy your dealership name if
I'm saying strategically start off
as the city.
Dealership name on mobile only.
Say it again.
Dealership name on mobile only, so you can make it easy for your customer to call. That's it.
It's up top.
That's it. It doesn't even have to be up top. And I don't even agree with buying your name, but the only way we would do it is if you buy it. And you know what else? You shouldn't allow your vendor to charge you a percentage management fee if it's percentage based on buying your name or any kind of simplified.
Yeah, I like that.
Or measure your campaigns with your name pulled out. So show me how I performed on all my keywords, not including my dealership name.
Yeah,
it really raises the bar to.
Repeat that again, George.
So, as you go through and you're measuring keywords, I mean, you can do it in GA or you can just ask the agency to. I want you to give me your overall results and then pull all branded campaigns out. That means anything with the word, if my store's name Nenni, pull my word out of any keyword and then give me the graded results. And you'd be able to see, because the agency is showing you rolled up metrics where your branded campaigns make everything look really rosy. And when you take that out, you see the ugliness.
That's exactly what I was saying before, Drew. I couldn't agree with you more. You can't, that's on branded terms. Yeah. And then don't allow them to charge you a percentage out of that spend on those branded terms. I mean, anything that just makes absolutely no sense. I mean, yeah.
Thanks for repeating that. I wanted to make sure everyone understood that. Yeah, that's that highly recommended idea.
Another piece, real quick, Jeff, is SEO. I think the agency business, defending agencies a little bit. There's not a lot of margin in that business. I mean, if you're charging a 25-30% agency fee, you got to keep the lights on. You got a lot of expenses. And I'm not saying this is dastardly, but I see SEO in too many cases. Dealers paying $800, $1,500, $1,800 for SEO. And so what we want to look at is your organic search traffic growing? Are your landing pages that they're building for you scoring higher and driving traffic? Or what are they doing? So I think dealers should simply ask, I'm paying for managed SEO. Last month, tell me the deliverables that you gave me for my managed SEO. Did you create content pages? Did you do Google My Business work? Are you working on backlink strategy? Tell me the deliverables. And if it's crickets, you're saying to yourself, well, or if they answer and say, well, Jeff, when we first built your site 2 years ago, we made sure that all the right tags were in. You're like, yeah, that's a one-time charge. What's the monthly fee for? Make sure you get, because it could just be full margin, tack on, for the agency.
I mean, I'll say this, there's 2 things to that. First, agencies make a lot more money than you think because there's all sorts of sub-vents that they get kicked back, which is a big part of a huge FBI investigations into agencies right now, because there's all sorts of different platforms and tools that they use that in many instances kick back to them, and you would never see that margin because you're paying on an impression basis and it's layered into that impression. And then second of all, on the SEO side, we happen to think, I agree with you, George, that SEO for the most part is super snake oily. I mean, all there really is proper schema, proper site structure to start. And believe it or not, SEO plays a role much more in paid than it does organic, because your relevancy and your quality score for your keywords is tied heavily to the content of your pages. And it's tied heavily to the schema, how your pages are defined to the search engine. So your cost per click will actually be lower if all that ties out. And then SEO, another component of it is citations, which is, let's say, Google My Business or Yelp or what have you, making sure they're all in order. And the third and most important component, I would say, is backlinks. and proper backlinks. Now, the problem with that is backlinks have been very spammy. They go out to 1 million. Like, let's say the New York Times has a story on a Honda Accord, and your agency goes out and comments on a Honda Accord, and they link it back to your site. Well, that's a good quality backlink. There are tons of, that's exactly what CarGurus got in trouble for, right? They built their own, thousands of their own sites, purportedly. I don't know the details. And they went and linked to their, and made it look, and that's besides that.
They made them look like they were domesticated websites.
Yeah, and they made it look like they were, you know, sites that had relevant content, and they were linking to CarGurus, and that made it gave it link juice, as it's called, and had them perform much better in the search engines for almost every term. That's what one portion, besides the cloaking portion, besides hiding content using JavaScript. So there's a lot.
The list goes on.
Yeah. So those three main things, and the problem is most agencies, they'll go out and they'll say, yeah, I see a lot of people taking over on Google My Business, taking over links on Google My Business and re-UTMing it as theirs. We see tons of funny, and they call it SEO. Again, SEO is really just three components: is proper site structure, schema. The second is, you know, citations, so on and so forth. And the third is backlinks. And that is, I mean, there's much more, but those are the three core elements. And backlinks, and the amount of time that you'd have to put in as an agency to do proper backlinks far eclipses what you're getting paid. So a lot of times, the $800 or $1,200 or $1,500, to George's point, is probably, you know, something that would have been a one-time event that you're paying for over the lifetime of you paying that vendor.
Yeah, I don't even know. I only just went after my own backlinks. I wouldn't even let it up to the vendor or our, you know, whoever we're using for SEO. You could just, I don't know where they're going to go get those links from.
You could sync a site with backlinks. If you want to, you can go out and buy tons of horrible backlinks, link it to your site, and you'll get penalized to oblivion, and then you'll have to try and get your site re-indexed. I mean, not only that, you can go out and use Google AMP pages now, attach lead forms, and you could flood your website with spam. You could flood your website with leads from anywhere. I mean, you can go on and on with the things that could be done, even by mistake, for someone not doing it the right way.
Yeah, that's why I never trusted any agency to do the backlinks. I've built a relationship with local businesses, schools, churches, etc. You know, and go after those. I know they're not as relevant maybe as they should be, but from a local standpoint, they are.
For sure.
And I think you make a great point, Jeffrey, in that getting educated on what makes good SEO is the first step. So, you know, I watch this in my dealer.com days. You go from one SEO analyst to the next, and they don't agree with each other within the same company under the same training. And they'll, you know, completely redo everything as a new SEO analyst comes in. And so everybody's got a different way of doing it.
It applies to everything, Alex. It's not just SEO. It applies to investing time, energy, and effort into understand. Look how much money you spend on, not you, but people spend on marketing, but yet you don't put any time, energy, or effort, and you expect it to all work out how it should.
Right. But it is about education, and that's what we're here for today, is to just educate everyone on these are things you should be looking out for. On the SEO topic, it's really just understanding those three tenets that you put forth.
Yeah.
And
making sure you
search. You know, George, you've got a really good way of saying, you know, here's how you should be looking at your paid search campaigns. So take your dealership name out of the results and grade it from that point.
Yeah.
That's what else have we? I just try to do a quick recap of things while.
Thank you, Alex. That's awfully nice of you.
I might have missed some because a lot's been said.
Well, I think it's matching the search query to the keyword. So if you are buying a lot of short tail and you're worried that you're getting a lot of erroneous clicks, go through and compare the search query to the keyword, to what people are searching for. And then the ones that are winners, you'll buy that string. You'll buy that, you know, if it's really common, you make sure you're constantly kind of getting an idea of what, you know, how well am I scoring in terms of what I'm buying and what they're searching for and what that match looks like. And I think, you know, keyword lists, in my opinion, if you switch agencies, get your keyword list, make sure you have logins to either AdWords or analytics. I think keyword lists are part of a dealer's intellectual property. And over time, if you move to a new agency, you say, hey, look, don't reinvent the wheel. Here's 100 keywords that work extremely well. Here's 20 that just crush it. Here's the match type and landing page. Run these, and then you can experiment with some others.
Why wouldn't you run your own at that point? That's to your point, George. Why shouldn't the dealer run their own at that point? You know?
I think branded you should, right? They don't change month to month. I mean, take the branded out. Okay, run those. You guys run the hard stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, there's plenty of programmatic buying solutions too that you could look into.
I mean, that's the whole new thing that no one talks about, which is the core of everything, is really, programmatic is just a phrase, but you're right. There's tons of, like right now you could buy video on Hulu, you could buy audio, programmatic audio spots within blogs. Within podcasts. You can buy media rich ads using display, and you can target specific IDs. There are so many other venues that no one discusses that collectively perform quite well, especially if you want to worry about brand and this, and outperform paid search from a cost perspective. Now, don't get me wrong, paid search running on search network only is a beautiful thing, it's super clean. The problem is that the cost may eclipse the benefit.
What are some other areas? What about social? Is there any ways that dealerships need to keep their eyes open with social marketing? I know you touched on that, George, earlier. Maybe dealerships should not so much get out of paid search, but reallocate some of that budget into social ads. Is there a way that dealerships need to sort of measure that, or more or less keep an eye open? Is there any way to gain? Is there any way agencies can gain that system as well?
Yeah, my opinion on social, it's much more difficult to do. It's not crazy difficult, but you've got Facebook metrics and you've got downstream website analytics metrics, right? So the key for that for me is marrying those up. And so I've got a simple kind of Google Doc I'm glad to share with anybody who needs it. And I basically have Facebook metrics here, which I ask the agency to fill out for me every month. They've got every campaign. They've got the frequency, the impressions, the cost per campaign, the clicks. And then I match those. They UTM tag them, so I know all the campaign names. I match those with Google Analytics metrics, and then slug those into the same one. And then we do cost per shop, or a cost, look at the how well did the traffic engage on the site, pages they looked at, did they convert, and really measure those by, cost per lead, cost per shopper. And otherwise, the agency review call on Facebook campaigns will just talk about impressions, and they might have phone calls, they might have conversions, but you really don't know a lot about the traffic, and you're not really indexing it well. So it may look like a winner in Facebook, however, it's extremely expensive for the little bit of traffic you got in GA.
Okay.
There's lots of things you can do. It's not just obviously just Facebook, there's Snap. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish with what medium. On Facebook, we don't run click campaigns. We only run lead form campaigns. And one of the things that we do is that we look for the MAIDs that we captured using, quote unquote, Polygons, and we export them as a custom audience into Facebook, and it's proven to be super effective on lead forms in terms of audiences to target against. So a lot of times people will take your database, they'll onboard it into Facebook, and they'll onboard it into Google, and that's effective for them because obviously they've already bought a car from you in the past. So if they're looking for a car, they can be reminded of such. So there's so many different things that you can do across every medium, including social, that you really just have to come up with a sound strategy. And then, measure all the things that really matter. Clicks don't matter because a lot of them may not be real. Impressions.
Back it up a little bit, Jeff. What are you saying? You say you only go after form fills on your social ads?
Yeah, that's another thing. So that they don't measure in GA because the traffic never took place on the DealerRefresh website. So, and at the end of the day, lead forms, I don't know if anyone understands how they work, but a simple click on it will populate all the information. So, and the good news about that is if you handle that right, it's a godsend. If you just call that person up out of nowhere, they kind of get mad in many instances we've seen because they're like, I didn't submit that form.
My pushback on those is I'm looking at a Ford F-150 on a Ford dealer's lot. Then I go up and I'm looking at grandkids and kittens and people's food. And then suddenly I see an ad. I'm like, oh, that's right. I was looking at that. And so I decide to divert shortly to go and click on that F-150 ad. And the ad says, do you want to get married? And I'm like, no, I'm not, give me your name. Give me your, like we immediately go to contact information. So my fear is that when you look at the CRM, you see, test, Mickey Mouse, and then they'll change the default stuff that Facebook's putting in there, or they just abandon that process. So, and I'm not saying that I'm the expert on it, but I just worry that the customer experience there is, I'm not ready to give you my information. I was ready to re-engage on a car I'd looked at before, but I'm not ready to get a phone call.
That all goes on to one thing. I believe that you're right in what you're saying, except for one factor. It all depends on how the ad's targeted, right? In the past, you used to be able to buy data in Facebook. Now it's still there, but people rely on Oracle, and it's still there for bigger players. Custom audiences are a whole different ball of wax. If you populate custom audiences using MAID or IDFA mobile device, and you have, let's say, location data, and you have browsing behavior assigned to that, and you know that the person is looking for an F-150, and then you pump that into Facebook, Facebook will take that MAID, which is the mobile device, they'll expand it to all the cookies that they know, and they'll hit that person across all the mediums, and it is super effective. If you do broad-based targeting that submits a lead on a click, meaning you click on it, it pre-populates the forms, and it's just pure submission without having had built a custom audience, then yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. But that's the whole thing. You have to understand each of these mediums and where you're spending your money, and then it becomes effective. But just to broadly...
Are you able to track form abandon rate? I haven't been able to figure out if Facebook gives you those metrics. Now, how often they click on it versus completion?
They give you CTR and such, sure. They give you, for example, sorry, let me phrase that. So rephrase that. So on a lead form, would be viewable impressions. The CTR on a lead form is the same as a lead form submission, because when you click on an ad, it is essentially submitting that lead. They pre-populate the forms on carousels.
CTR divided by lead forms is the batting average.
Well, they tell you you'll get a total amount of leads that come. You'll get impressions, CTR, and lead forms submitted, and and you'll look at the total amount of lead forms to the impressions, and you can get quite cheap. You can get down to like $4 for a unique lead per se, and especially if you're using custom audiences. The key is custom audiences. You run custom audiences, you will have a great return. If you run broad-based targeting, it's the same as anything else.
What have you found? What's the batting average? Or have you looked at those numbers?
Oh no, yeah, we just looked at something yesterday in terms of total lead counts within a specific dealer. It was like 5,279 leads, and the conversion lead to sale was about 3.6%. So
how often do they click on the ad, see that I got to give up my information, and bail versus complete the form?
Oh, see that you got to give up your information, but don't submit it?
Yeah, so they click and they're like, uh-oh, I'm not doing this, and they bail out of that process.
I don't know the answer to that.
Trade pending tracks that. Edmunds with their new trade-in tool tracks that. And that's an important thing. Like I started to go down the road here. Now I'm not gonna give you my information.
Well, I mean, on those type things, just so we're on the same page, we capture even on many things forms that aren't filled out. So you start to fill out a form, we capture every keystroke within that form. So I mean, it all depends. There's lots, and I'm sure trade pending or maybe others do that too. But I would say to you that I don't have the stats from Facebook. I mean, I'm sure maybe we do. I could look it up. I just never looked.
Yeah, if you do, I'd love to see them.
That CTR, though, on a lead form, especially if it's simply click, for click submission, especially in Instagram and others, yeah, I think it's synonymous. But I'll take a look. I'm happy to get back to
I haven't been able to find it. I haven't been able to find that stat, which would help me in my mind say, am I right or am I wrong?
Well, it really comes down to cost acquisition for me. I mean, to me, at the end of the day, if did that lead generate a sale, and what was my total spend versus my gross on sales, right? And that's really, to me, what it comes out to. So for us, that's another thing. There's so many vanity metrics out there that are measured or pushed forward by agencies to put people in their best light. Yeah. Most of it's worthless. What is the overall cost per acquisition of a new client to a sale? And what's the cost acquisition of an existing client? Am I spending the same for both, and why? I mean, those are the two things that we look at. Lifetime value of that customer, once you have them, is worth its weight in gold. That's why I don't give up your DMS. And then new acquisition, how much it costs me to acquire, and is that new acquisition cost going down with my current vendor? That's really the measure. Not am I selling more cars, because who knows, one person could have pumped a lot more leases into a specific area 2 years back, and they have a higher penetration, and there's lease returns, and they sold more that month. And there's 8 million different things that could factor. Your salesman woke up on the wrong side of the bed. But the reality is how much is your cost of acquisition going down?
Yep. Then
you can expand sales. That's just our perspective. Money in your pocket is worth something.
Every time. Well, gentlemen, it's 2:15. Alex, did you have any other questions? George?
We could be here for the rest of the week.
What's that?
We could be here through the weekend and into next week with these two.
And me too. I'm taking notes. So thanks for some of the tips, Jeffrey.
Oh, listen,
I'm going to have to go raid the cabinet. But
George, I think a role like yours is a great role. I think that if agencies, if dealers had an advocate, I say it in healthcare too, right? In healthcare, the biggest problem is that, there's no advocate for a lot of people, and you have to spend God knows how much in the healthcare system. And it's the same thing in this. I mean, I think an advocate for someone who can look at it and do all the research and work on some sort of, fee base for that, I think it's worth its weight in gold. I think then, you can help start articulating the values, the things that matter without having a horse in the game. And I think that makes sense.
That's a great comparison. And I have some dealers that do that. They're like, when they get a digital vendor call on them, they call this guy, email this guy. If he says I should look at it, I'll look. Maybe it becomes overwhelming at times for me, but from them, they just sleep better at night knowing that I got somebody looking at it. So.
An advocate. I think it's spot on. I mean, all my dealings with you, I say have been good. So I say to other people out in the industry, and one of them in particular, Alex, you had asked for if I had cared if we'd be on together. I would have smiled had it been the case. I don't believe that person's a real advocate. There's always a sub-agenda, but we'll leave it at that.
All right, guys, let's bring it to an end. Thanks, as always, Jeffrey, George. George, we'll have you back here soon again. I've got some more things I want to talk with you on another subject. So, and next week we've got sort of a different topic coming out of the woodworks. We're going to be talking about connected TV, and we've got
programmatic.
We've got a great set of gentlemen joining us next week. We're going to be talking about connected TV, OTT, just a shit ton of acronyms, but basically just breaking it down through, well, I guess everyone's got different points for it, but new TV, how can you get into the different networks? I didn't even realize there were so many free, I don't know how you would say it, but free TV.
It's all ID based, Jeff. That's all ID-based targeting. It's all programmatic. That is, you take an ID, the same ID that you're building a custom audience with via MAID or what have you. That is exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. It really is. So, and I think it's a topic that a lot of dealerships aren't very familiar with. I know I wasn't, so I've been doing a lot of research just over the past 2 or 3 weeks. You've got your agencies coming in, your local cable networks coming in, and they're talking about this. And I don't think a lot of dealerships are really totally aware of exactly what's going on, how you purchase it, how you measure it, all that good stuff. So that's what we're going to be talking about next Friday.
Who is it? Who's coming on?
Who Interactive? We've got some gentlemen. You familiar?
No, but I always like to learn.
Yeah. Well, join. Both of you. So, all right, gentlemen, once again, thank you so much. And we'll see everybody back here next Friday.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Thank you.